He accused him of being an enemy to actors and said his films were terrible. Because of his intense animosity toward this well-known actor, Robert Duvall declined $1 million in order to keep away from him. John Wayne had to intervene to put a stop to their vicious argument. Never was Duvall's harsh response when asked whether he would collaborate with him again. If I never do, it's okay with me. The identity of Duvall's most despised co-star will shock you. He came into this world in San Diego, California on January 5th, 1931. He came from a long line of artists and soldiers. His mother Mildred was a fantastic singer who put on local performances frequently. Through her family tree, Duvall was related to Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general. One of his most prominent film roles came from this connection. He was fathered by William. He rose through the ranks of the Navy to the rank of captain at the young age of 39. When you were a kid growing up in a military household, rules and structure were paramount. The Duvall family moved around a lot. Among other locations, they made their homes on military installations in Virginia, Rhode Island, and Maryland. For the most part, Robert spent his childhood there. Although Robert's father had urged him to enlist, Robert had no interest in doing so. After the fact, he admitted that his acting skills were his sole academic strength. While a young student at Maryland's Severance School and Missouri's Principia, he developed an interest in playing the piano. After finishing high school, he decided to pursue his interest in theater at Principia College in Illinois. Though his life had other plans, he earned a degree in theater in 1953. He enlisted in the Army the same year he began playing professionally. His military service began immediately upon the conclusion of the Korean War, and he spent nearly a year at Camp Gordon in Georgia. Compared to his father, his experience in the military was unique. Even though he was a private first class, he frequently mocked his lack of toughness. His participation in a community theater production was nonetheless a significant accomplishment during that time. While performing in the stage production of Room Service, he reflected on his life goals. A significant event occurred in 1955. He readied himself and relocated to New York City so he could pursue acting professionally at the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater. The Sanford-Meisner method, which emphasized authenticity and spontaneity on stage, was taught at the school. He was not alone. His class included Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, and James Caan. Everyone was young, dirt poor, and determined. New York was a tough place to call home. In order to cover his rent, he took any job he could find. He did everything from driving trucks to working in retail and mail delivery. Even though he didn't perform in these roles, he gained insight into everyday life that he used to give his characters depth in subsequent works. He shared a cramped room with Hoffman and Hackman. A fold-out couch was their go-to for alternate nights of sleep. Although they struggled as a team, they persisted. The three of them would eventually become Hollywood heavy hitters, earning dozens of Oscar nominations and victories among themselves. For Duvall, his big break came. He became famous after his performance as a troubled man in The Midnight Caller. Horton Foote, a writer, saw him in that role and went on to assist him in landing even bigger roles. In challenging plays such as A View from the Bridge, for which he received an Obie Award in 1965, Duvall persistently demonstrated his capacity, but it was a small but powerful scene in the film that brought him to everyone's attention. In 1962, he portrayed Boo Radley in the film To Kill a Mockingbird. Even though Boo says nothing in the film, Duvall gives a stellar performance as the character. He conveyed Boo's benevolence and mystique solely through his eyes and gestures. Horton Foote saw him perform and immediately thought he was perfect for the role. According to Harper Lee, I was in agreement. In her letter, she simply wrote, "Hey Boo." To achieve her ghostly paleness, Duvall spent weeks hiding from the sun. To channel the character Boo from the children's book, he dyed his hair white. Because of these subtle adjustments, he was able to pass for the part. Boo remains a mystery character right up until the credits roll. As a result, tensions rise. Scout has a quiet, melancholy moment as she quietly says, "Hey Boo," upon finally seeing Boo. Instead of being the monster that others believed him to be, he protects Scout and her brother. He represents the innocence of the mockingbird, a bird that should not be harmed as the story progresses. At first, Duvall had one line in the film, but it was cut. Words were ultimately unnecessary for him. Their absence didn't weaken his performance. Among the most renowned performances in cinematic history, Robert Duvall's portrayal of Tom Hagen in the Godfather films remains unparalleled. Being the lawyer for the Corleone family wasn't Hagen's only role. Because of his reputation for peaceful problem solving, they had faith in him and knew he could protect them from harm. He was given a subtle authority by Duvall. The family let him live with them, but he was never quite at home. His mixed German and Irish heritage made him feel like an outsider even after Vito Corleone adopted him as a child. Michael and Sonny weren't him. He despised being in charge or acting impulsively. Hagen was dependable, perceptive, and meticulous in his planning. The Godfather, which was released in 1972, featured Duvall's outstanding acting. Even though he wasn't directly involved in making any of the major decisions, Hagen frequently served as the peacemaker and mediator when tensions ran high. He saw the legendary Hollywood director Jack Waltz when he was a young man and did something that became famous. Hagen was thoughtful to approach Johnny Fontane about a possible film role. After that failed, they communicated via message. The sleeping figure of Waltz's cherished steed was there beside him when he awoke. Hagen ensured that the threat was delivered even though he did not make it himself. By 1974, when The Godfather Part 2 was released, the role of Hagen had been altered. Michael left the nation to uncover the truth after a life-threatening attempt. While he was away, he left Hagen to step in as Dom. The faith his loved ones had in him was evident in that. Things were going swimmingly at first, but then Michael became icy and nasty. He made his move to dislodge Hagen. Vito would never have told him anything, so he kept quiet. Duvall subtly demonstrated this transformation. You could tell Hagen wasn't sure, but he was faithful anyway. Though he disagreed with Michael on occasion, he remained by the family's side. Best Supporting Actor was an Oscar category that Duvall was considered for in 1972. He was honored just to be nominated, regardless of the outcome. Hagen, in contrast to the brash and aggressive Michael, Brando, was subdued and collected. Key discussions were unnecessary for him. A scream was unnecessary. His voice carried authority. He was composed and cautious at all times. His unique perspective made him a compelling character in the show. A lot of people assumed Duvall would be returning when The Godfather Part 3 was announced. The film industry, however, had undergone a transformation by 1990. An offer of $8 million 0 cents was made to Al Pacino to reprise the role. Much less was allotted to Duvall. He refused when he noticed the large disparity in pay, despite his opposition to equal pay. In retrospect, he claimed it made no difference to him whether Pacino had earned twice as much. However, he departed once the disparity had grown to 3 or 4 times its original size. Duvall was not involved in the rewriting process. The story did not include Hagen. Rather, he was omitted. After the show, he allegedly passed away. BJ is the new family lawyer. The addition of George Hamilton as Harrison wasn't enough. There was obviously something lacking, according to both fans and critics. Francis Ford Coppola, the film's director, agreed that Duvall's exit altered the storyline. The original plan was to center on the friendship and potential power struggle between Michael and Hagen. After Hagen departed, though, that plan was abandoned. That detracted from the film, according to many. Despite his absence from the third film, Duvall's legacy lives on in the first two. Throughout the years, he reminisced about the set. One involving Marlon Brando was the most famous. Brando stashed cue cards all over the set because he hated having to memorize lines. Attached to walls or concealed behind props, they were there. In an incident, Duvall had Brando's lines written on his chest. Brando believed that he could make his acting more authentic by struggling to find the correct words. Although some viewed it as inefficient, the results were evident. His portrayal of Don Vito Corleone catapulted him to stardom. Even though he was awarded an Oscar for it, he allegedly refused to accept it. Among Robert Duvall's many notable film roles are some of the most iconic ones. His roles, despite their size, are consistently grounded in reality. Apocalypse Now featured him as Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore. Kilgore was a fearsome and endearing fighter. The Vietnam War was depicted in a bizarre and unsettling manner in Francis Ford Coppola's film. There was no reason for Kilgore to be afraid. He treated battle as if it were a game. His famous quote, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning," makes history in the film industry. Damage in Kilgore's mind was a victory, and he seemed oblivious to the horrors unfolding around him. That character was not created by Duvall out of thin air. 40 small pains were encircling him. In addition to serving in the army, his father was a naval commander. He was familiar with the actions of actual soldiers. In one of his more peculiar moments, Kilgore orders his men to surf in the midst of bombs going off. The war appears to be completely unknown to him. And let us not forget the iconic scene in which the chopper plays Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries as bombs go off. There has never been a scene on film that has left such an impression. Even though Duvall didn't appear in many scenes, they were all crucial. In addition to helping make Apocalypse Now a hit, he won a Golden Globe. That same year, he portrayed an entirely different type of fighter in The Great Santini. On this occasion, he was known as Lieutenant Colonel Wilbur Bull Meacham. He was a fierce fighter for the Marines, full of himself when in the air, but vicious when at home. His family was more like a squad to him than a group of friends. His son Ben took the brunt of the harm. An excruciating scene depicts Meacham and Ben playing basketball. Whenever Ben succeeds, Meacham disapproves. Instead of being happy, he gets angry. However, Duvall did more than turn Meacham into an antagonist. Though he was at a loss for words when it came to expressing his feelings, the character showed his concern in subtle ways. Compared to the book, some critics felt that Duvall made Meacham more likable. The film conveyed the negative effects of having too much power and the proper way for men to feel about their pride. In the final act, Meacham tries to mend fences with his loved ones, but by then it's already too late. Oscar nominations came Duvall's way for that performance. After some more time had passed, he delivered a performance that was both compassionate and emotionally powerful in Tender Mercies. A drunk country singer who had lost nearly everything, he played the role of Max Sledge. His quiet journey to a small town in Texas to start over was depicted in the film. He changed after falling in love with a widow and her son. Traveling all over Texas, Duvall learned the language and culture of the people he met. Every one of Mac's songs was sung by him. The movie has a heartbreaking scene where Mac reaches out to his daughter again. Tragically, she passes away in a car accident at the same moment they were reconciling. Because it demonstrates that some opportunities never return, that moment saddens me. It was a charming and astute film. It explored healing and hope in subtle, understated ways. According to him, it was a pivotal role. He kept his cool, allowing his expressions and body language to convey his feelings. He won an Oscar even though the film bombed at the box office. People enjoyed it because it was both straightforward and intricate. Duvall finally gave the apostle all of his possessions after a long time. It was his lifelong ambition, not merely a playing gig. He had a hand in producing, writing, and funding the film. No studio was interested in adapting it because, in his opinion, the story was that good. He portrayed Pentecostal preacher Sonny Dewey, who inspires listeners but struggles with issues of ego and wrath. Sonny strikes a man in his rage. In an effort to begin anew in a tiny town in Louisiana, he undergoes the sacrament of baptism. Production on the film wrapped up in just 7 weeks. The scenes seemed more natural and less staged because many of the guests were actual churchgoers. Sonny was pleasant but elusive. His ability to calmly persuade a racist construction worker through his sermon is a highlight of the film. Both his strengths and his weaknesses were revealed by this. Having Duvall play the part was never a joke. He told it like it was. He reaped the benefits. Many critics praised the film for being truthful, and he was nominated for another Academy Award. Despite its lack of popularity, many were touched by the sincere portrayal of faith and forgiveness in it. Teaching, according to Duvall, is one of America's finest art forms. His work in The Apostle was a living embodiment of that art. He has been through a lot in his professional life, and the same is true in his personal life. Each of his 4 marriages has been unique and interesting in its own way. He wed Barbara Benjamin first. She was a dancer for the Jackie Gleason show. The set of To Kill a Mockingbird was where they first crossed paths in the early 1960s. His 1964 marriage to Barbara came after she had 2 daughters from a prior relationship. The 2 women were known as Nancy and Susan. Movies like The Godfather catapulted Duvall to stardom after he struggled to establish himself in the 80s Hollywood scene. Notoriety aided their success, but also placed undue pressure on them. In 1975, their marriage had ended. Those were formative years for him, though he rarely discusses them. Barbara passed away in 2019 in New York City following a long illness. 7 years after his first divorce, Duvall tied the knot again, specifically in 1982 to actress Gail Youngs. Her famous relatives include Robin Youngs, Jim Youngs, and John Savage. They collaborated on Duvall's Oscar-winning film, Tender Mercies. Although their on-screen chemistry helped them appear closer, it ultimately failed to save their marriage. By 1986, they had broken up. After meeting Gail, Duvall reconsidered his earlier statement that he would never wed an actor. It must have been difficult for them to split up, especially considering they were both employed in the same industry.